Running commentary. We are exploring listening to albums. We sat down and we listened to the artist's vision and concept. Spandau Ballet, True. Spandau Ballet, True was released in 1983 and featured 4 singles: True, Gold, Communication, and Lifeline. Spandau Ballet were very much a heartthrob band. These were a band that appealed to the ladies. And it wasn't just one member of the band that was subject to their attentions. Some plumped for Tony Hadley, the lead singer. Others plumped for Steve Norman, the saxophone players. And certainly in droves, they also plumped for Martin Kemp, the bass player. Spandau Ballet had arrived out of the Blitz club scene, the new romantic scene, and blazed onto the scene with To Cut a Long Story Short. This album was a departure in style for them. They had kind of worked their way through the different fashions, the different fads of styles. And this was no different on the True album, where we found them now wearing 3-piece suits as a quintet and looking much more tousled and airbrushed. The fact that this album was recorded in the Bahamas at the Compass Point studio gives you a sort of feel of the kind of expenditure and the kind of lavish rock and roll dream that Spandau Ballet were living together with Duran Duran, Culture Club, and Wham. I was very pleased with Lifeline. I always thought that this was a fantastic song. It was the follow-up to Instinction, which I also loved. I just thought it was a great kind of upbeat, fresh pop sound. I thought it translated well. I loved the guitar, the optimism, the upbeatness of it. I thought it really fit in well with the musical landscape of 1982. Communication at the beginning of 1983 was a number 12 hit, I believe, and, did very well for the band. The organ there that they have is kind of alternative and different. Communication is not quite as memorable as the other singles, but it's still not a bad song. As far as True, the single, which is sort of soul influenced, and you can tell, with a thrill in my head and a pill on my tongue, listening to Marvin all night long. This was the departure here, that they'd gone from this kind of new romantic thing to this sort of soul boy thing. From anyone looking on, they almost became like a follow-on to the romantic machinations of ABC the year before. They actually had crossed over on producers, with Trevor Horn producing Instinction for the band in 1982. So this album was kind of more soulful, more gentle, definitely, again, appealed to the ladies. I thought that True was an adequate song. It wasn't my favorite song. I wasn't against it. I liked it. I liked the chorus. I have sung along to it from time to time. Big hit in 1983, one of the top 10 sellers of that year. For me, the best song on the album is the track Gold, a triumphant, blockbusting song, really big vocals, kind of an alternative presentation, a nice lavish production. I really felt that the band came together well on this song, and I don't think they ever bettered the single Gold. I really thought that it was a great musical collaboration, and there were a lot of ideas. I thought the lyrics were quite good. I thought that the video was great for Gold. We now start to go into different territory, because what it becomes now is a little bit more filler. This is like, these songs are just not quite as important unless you're a teenage girl with a crush. Pleasure it's adequate. It doesn't do anything special. Code of Love, like really just very sappy, sort of wet dreams for teenage girls. These songs kind of don't matter. And this is a change of direction for Spandau Ballet, who was kind of, I thought, sort of took themselves sort of fairly seriously in the new romantic role. And here they were slushing around with this sort of romantic themed or tinged music. Heaven is a Secret, not very memorable, not very important as far as I'm concerned. Foundation, the second time around, actually grew on me a little bit. I listened to the album all the way through twice, and I found the band to be, I really do think that this is some of their best work. That's not necessarily saying much. Spandau Ballet were a great singles band. I wouldn't say that they were throwaway, but they were a band that really kind of fit the time. I don't know that they were really significant much outside of the 80s. Of course, if you have a teenage heartthrob in a band, you are going to follow that person to the end of beyond. And I know that this band essentially were really tarted up for this album and presented with this sort of album cover, which didn't feature them on the cover. There's a kind of almost arty kind of pieces on the front cover of the album. There are only 8 tracks on the album. And I think it's interesting, really, because 4 of those are singles, and the singles are good, and Foundation's quite good. Gold is really great. True's familiar kind of nostalgia. You don't mind hearing it once in a while. It's not Don't You Want Me, but it's not Come a Chameleon. It's True for me sits right in the middle. I don't mind hearing it from time to time. It got played a lot, but it's a kind of a gentle song, and I think its heart's in the right place. And Lifeline, I can't get enough of. I think it's a great single, and Communication is fine. At the end of the day, what I walk away with from Spandau Ballet is that it was light. It was light fare. There's nothing heavy going on here. It's part of my childhood. It's part of my growing up. So I feel kind of warm towards the things that I like. There's no, remember when we reviewed the Tom Petty album, there's not a lot to think about here. This is music which is designed to be consumed. And once you've consumed it, it's kind of over. You don't necessarily need to go back to it. A lot of my connection with the singles, particularly Gold and Lifeline, are that I just thought they were great singles from the period, and they fit really well into what was happening in the top 10 at that time. On the initial mark for True by Spandau Ballet had been lower, but on the second listen I really realized that this was probably as good as it was going to get. If I went to Parade or any of the other Spandau Ballet albums, I don't think I would have been as impressed. They were a fad band to my mind. And I don't think they came out the other side of this album creatively very well. There was a long gap between Gold, which had hit in August of 1983, and Only When You Leave, which was released in June of 1984. That was a very long gap for a teen band to sustain. Wham had done it a little bit more successfully, but had come back with a lot more optimism and bounce. And I really feel that Wham took over from Spandau Ballet in 1984 as kind of people started to regard the different bands differently. And Wham was still newer at that time. Spandau had been around at that time for, about 4 years. So I started to feel towards 84 that they were running out of material and running out of inspiration. I think the videos, there was a lot more spent on the videos, and they still could command an audience who, was still in love with them in 1984. But by 1985, where they were virtually invisible, by the time they came back in the end of 1986, it really was kind of a wrap for Spandau Ballet. I award the album 70%. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, recommend it to friends, post comments. Also, if you have an album that you'd like to hear reviewed, we welcome your requests.